I gotta like.
Yeah, I know. Just shrink down a little bit.
No, you're all good. I'll sit on my knees.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Legends of Tabletop podcast. We're getting ready to jump into our interview episode 191, one of our regular episodes. We don't do this very often anymore, but David had reached out to me to come on to speak about EverLore. So I want to welcome David and Anthony from ManChild Ltd. How's it going?
Hey, guys.
Greetings. I feel like there should be some clapping for us.
Right, yes.
You know, big shots.
They had all that in post.
But yeah, I'm David Thompson. This is Anthony Friesen, and we are from ManChild Ltd. And I'm just glad that you responded. We love to tell you guys about our new tabletop role-playing game, EverLore. So ask any questions you got, and we'll try not to make too big of fools of ourselves, but no guarantees.
Well, you're in good company here. Well, let's start with the most boring question, I guess, right? The one that probably gets asked all the time. How did you both get into gaming?
All right. Well, when I was younger, both of my parents are ministers. And so when I was probably about 15 or so, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons at a friend's house. And I played it for about 2 or 3 sessions. One day I came home with a migraine, and my parents were convinced we were summoning Satan. And so they were like, no more. So that was the end of that for several years. So it wasn't until I moved out and went to college that I was able to start gaming again. And so at that point, I started going to just various, places to try to see where I could fit in. And so I played a couple of different systems, maybe for a total of 1 to 2 years altogether. But I kept sort of running into different situations where, I'd want to play a character that looked like me, with brown skin and things like that. And I would get, the DM saying, oh, well, you can't do that because in this region, they don't really exist,
Right,
and so I had to play, some blonde-headed, blue-eyed, Viking type character or whatever. And that just never sat well with me, because I couldn't be me. And so that's why I started thinking like, what do I do to get my dream out? And I started talking to other minorities who were into gaming, and they had a lot of the same experiences. And so that's sort of how I started thinking about this. But what about you? How'd you start into gaming itself?
Into gaming itself. Well, it, kind of starts off just like any other, young Midwestern child. You just play games on the computer, consoles. Jack Daxter was like a really big thing I was into for a while, and just big on playing the games with my friends and stuff. And eventually one day I was at the pool at our local area, and I saw Big Man Dave here just jotting away at I think it was a piece of paper you had with like the little black box you keep all the drawings in. And I just asked like, hey, what are you drawing? It looks really cool. And he was just telling me it was about like this priest character he was designing for this ambitious project he was working on. So I was talking to his son Caleb, who's on the stream with us, and we were starting to concept this kingdom of empiric bug people. And eventually Dave caught on, and he was like, yeah, no, that's really sick. Do you want to concept some more creatures just every once in a week? And I'm like, of course, that's sick. So we come in, we come up with the idea for some creatures. I think one was like a shadow panther, and then we had the muskroon, which is like this big mushroom brute, and then for the final one we have the Andrani, which are like these bug people who live in giant kingdoms of dirt mounds, and they have a bunch of dealings with gods and stuff. And ever since that, it's been my main outlet into tabletop role-playing games was EverLore.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no prior experience. I think the only time that I got into other tabletop role-playing games was that I saw like a Dungeons and Dragons stream. But like,
Well, it's funny because I remember. Now I've known Anthony. He and my sons used to be on the same swim league, and so I've known him since he was probably 6 or 7 or so.
I would have been
And
like 9.
okay, about
Yeah.
9. And I remember once we were at a swim championship, and this little Anthony was running around, and he had a bunch of other little kids with him, and he was like,
I know exactly.
and
what
he
you're talking
was
about.
like DMing them, you know, and it was just so funny because I was sitting there drawing and listening to him. Oh no, and you do this, and there was no dice, there was nothing.
There was no dice. We just took a piece of chalk that was
Yeah.
no, it wasn't a piece of chalk. It was like mulch, and it was like one side was lighter than the
Yeah.
other, and so it was like you have to hit the light side 3 out of 4 times, or else you miss this attack.
And the kids and they were clueless, but they were enthralled, you know, and so it was just so funny listening to that. And then, you know, about 3 or 4, you know, probably 2 or 3 years later is when I think he was around 13 or 14 is when you know, I started meeting with him and my youngest son once a week at the local rec center, just to, you know, talk about different creatures and things like that, because I always want kids to believe in the future and believe that they can do something. And so I thought, you know, he was enthralled with something that I was doing, and I liked his energy. And so I wanted to make sure that I was able to keep promoting that. And he had some great ideas. And when he and Caleb got together as my son, you know, they would just go crazy places.
The creative
Right.
energy was just explosive.
Yeah, you know, and so you know, he's still around today, so he must be doing something right.
They couldn't get rid of me just yet.
Well, that's the cool thing about, you know, especially with games and kids, because they, you know, there's no limitation, right? Like, oh, we'll just flip a piece of bark over and like, cool, like I'm all in. What's the story? Like there's vampire unicorns with wings and like fucking who cares, right? Like it's just
not too far
whatever's kind of in that moment.
Well,
That's
the
really
funny
cool.
thing is I had to rein them in a lot because, you know, they were so into like anime and all that stuff. So everything was some type of higane or whatever they were calling it, and it was just like, okay, you know, no copyrighted stuff.
You're right. Do you guys do board games and stuff at all too, or do you play other role-playing games? Or, I mean, like obviously you play an Everlore, but
I have designed. I started this way back in probably 2002 with a game called Legions, and it was a playing card game, and it's actually set in the same world that Everlore is, and the world is called Mythandria, and so that was doing well. We basically ran into some issues with a larger company, had to set that on the back burner. And then I did develop a board game called Retribution, and it's something that's in the works. It's actually sitting right over there on the shelf.
I gave it away when I looked over at it.
And so that is something that we will bring out. Again, that's in another one of the continents called Eranos. And so right now what we're just trying to do is we're trying to establish the Realm of EverLore through the primary product of this tabletop role-playing game. We're releasing our first novella, which actually we'll be highlighting at the upcoming Origins. Check us out, yeah. And then, so we'll have that. Then we're, you know, with the success of that, we're going to go ahead and do the board games, eventually get into, you know, animations and things like that.
Nice, ambitious. I like it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, if you're going to shoot for it, shoot all the way.
Yeah. And then on top of that, we have another thing we're working on, which are you cool if we talk about that here? Or?
Let it roll.
Got you. So there's
exclusive.
this genre of game that I oh sorry, my bad. What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say exclusives. We got exclusives.
Right? Here, Legends of Tabletop exclusive. Yeah, no, it's a project that I've been setting together for a little bit just to present to Dave. The idea is that maybe you've ever heard of a roguelike or something like that. And it's there's a lot of roguelike card games that have came out recently. Maybe you've heard of something like Inscription or Slay the Spire.
Second one sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's the idea is that like you're exploring through some kind of area, and you like get different tools to your exposable or exposal you can use different tools, and it's like each time you run through the game it's a different experience, so it's like very high in replayability. And when Dave is telling me about these different continents that are used for like different games, I'm thinking that would be perfect for an online roguelike combat card game where it's like you have to manage resources, you've got a goal that you're trying to get to on a map, and you can use different tools, like the different characters and creatures that we come up with. They can be used for different things, plenty of different artifacts that we can use. Nothing we've agreed on tight mechanically yet. I still have to kind of walk Dave through the idea of like what we're going through, but it's a project that we've I let Dave know I'm interested in, and he's willing to work with me on it.
Well, and the idea is, of course, we're going to focus on the tabletop role-playing game, and make sure that's the base. And the hope, the plan, the dream is that the success from this will, be able to launch all that. And so these are dreams down the line. We got to make sure that this product is on point, and so far it's been great.
Yeah,
cool. I'm jumping ahead question-wise as you guys are talking about all these different things that are coming out. So is Everlore a living world, kind of like the old World of Darkness was, where they had a meta plot where things were happening, so you'd buy a new book and these grand designs were sort of happening in the background. So as new products are coming out, as novels are coming out, does that change the layers and textures of Everlore?
Yes, very much so. Right now, we currently have 2 Twitch streams. One is Evermore with Everlore, and that's the one that the 2 of us are in, and it has a group of adventurers called Wahuru, and so they've been established for about 2 or so years, and so they are carrying on their adventure. But there's another stream, and it's called Essence of Everlore, and that one is a group of adventurers that are newer, and they haven't quite decided on a name yet. But these events are taking place in the same basic time frame. And then also the novella that we're working on, actually I've just finished it, where it's in the editing stage, but that's a 3rd story arc that's going on now. But beyond that, there are other plots that are working within the broader realm. And so the idea is that there are things that are happening. So as we come out with each installment, cities may fall, new kingdoms may rise, things like that. Yeah, so it definitely is a living world. And I think one of the things that the benefit to that is it gives a lot of player agency, because, we provide a ton of customization. And then, you're able to, sorry, my son's coming down the, distracted. But with that, you're able to decide, sort of, okay, I liked where my character was going, but guess what? His kingdom just fell. So we're about to jump.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. That's not something you see a lot of anymore, I feel like. So it's a neat concept for players to have in mind, that like, okay, well, we're doing this, but who knows what's going to happen, 2-3 books down the line. That and it's like you said, for character interaction and their engagement with the world, like it's just a really neat concept.
Yeah.
Very cool. You talked a little bit about what prompted you to design the world. How come fantasies? Is it just because D&D is the elephant in the room, fantasy is the most recognizable? Did you have any other thoughts of where you might want to set it, or was it it was always going to be fantasy?
That's in me, ever since I was young. When I was growing up, as a kid, I wanted to have 100 jobs when I grew up, and it was, it was firefighter, superhero, swashbuckling pirate, all of these things, but they all involve me being the hero. And, all of my dreams were just so vivid. And so every morning I'd wake up and I'd write my dreams down, and I had just journals full of just, different ideas. And so even before I knew that I was going to do this, I was writing concepts for this. When I was in high school, I was a good student. I wasn't as good as I could have been because I wasn't really focused on it. But one thing that I did excel at was in writing, and it was because a lot of the stories I wrote were fantasy stories, and so this was just something that was a part of me, and it was a way for me to express who I was, and that's why the sort of ostracization that I was receiving sort of impacted so much, because it was something that I wanted to be a part of, and it was like I couldn't be. You were the other. And so what I wanted to do was to create this as a way to show that this is for everybody. It's addition, not subtraction. And and that's why I love having Anthony here, because he and I are not the same.
Oh yeah, not at all. This dude is like twice my height, super creative. I just kind of, I'm there during the stream, but Dave really, he soars off with the kind of creative stuff, whereas like I'm able to commit to like a lot of social things, like I can do accents, that kind of deal. And so, just having a bunch of different kinds of people on the crew really accentuates what Everlore is. It's supposed to account for the fact that, diversity has a place in tabletop role-playing games. And, Everlore, its job is to say, hey, anybody is able to do this kind of thing. You just have to want to do it.
Yeah. And we've been purposeful in trying to set up a team that is diverse. We've tried to make sure that we have women on the team, black, white, things like that. And so that's something that we want to carry as we grow bigger, because we want to have this be a game where we can truly say to people, this game is for you. And so that's why, the tag is that, Everlore is a game that has lots of diversity and customization. It's not limited by classes or levels. If that's the kind of game that you want, this game is for you,
Right. And it sucks. I mean, in 2022, that like you have to say that, right? That it's for everybody and people should be included, and that your experience, growing up was what it was. And unfortunately is still that way. I don't want to say by and large, right? Because as a white guy, I don't experience that, right?
Yeah,
so like, I don't like, I hear stories, people come on the show and say stuff, or, you talk to different people, but like, if you're, if I don't overhear something, if I don't see something, it's almost like, I'm using quotes that it doesn't exist. And clearly it does. Cause get on role-playing Twitter and it's just shitty stuff, and it sucks, right? Like it's stupid. Like with the combat wheel, you can't have that. Okay, well, you have krakens and peg side, like ropers, like all this dumb shit, but you can't play someone who looks like you, or you can't play someone who's sexually different, or is physically different, and needing a wheelchair or something like that. It's just dumb. I mean, like it's just stupid.
And the thing is, it's like, with Everlore, I designed it so it's not like we're not beating you over the head with it, so it's, you're not going to walk in the room and every player you meet is going to be gay or something like that. But it's just like in this world, when you walk down the street, unless you're talking skin color, you don't know what that person is, and so that's how it is in Everlore. You might happen to be speaking to someone who might be gay or lesbian or whatever, but it doesn't, it's not going to be something that is earth shattering, but we also do still deal with, real life issues, like there's still prejudice, and so like one of the things that I'm dealing with in the novella is we're dealing with an elf, and in Everlore, the elves are treated with a lot of suspicion and hatred. And so I'm able to pull lessons from my childhood, things that I had to deal with, and frame them in the guise of the hero of the elf. And so my brother read the novel, and he called me and he said, man, that sounded like he was black, because that was an experience he had,
Right.
and so that's what I want to talk to, while still sharing this, beautiful world with everybody, but our stories matter, and so that's what it is.
Yeah. That's cool. It's cool that it's as recognizable that your brother's able to just sort of pick it up, and it makes me want to get it now, right? So that I can at least in some fraction, some
Yeah,
simile
yeah.
of be able to experience, not experience it, but like experience through story.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
That's
Well, and honestly, I think, often that's all it is just people not being able to have those conversations, and that's all this is a way to be able to broach subjects so that it's not so threatening, and you might have a conversation with somebody after seeing something like that, or you might not, but that's okay.
right. You have to be open to it and hold the space for it, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's what we should all be working for.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
do you ever, I mean, obviously not with your personal group, but like, we play a lot of Call of Cthulhu as well, right? So like 1920s, super racist, all sorts of effed up, right? And you play characters from today's perspective, right? So like, you're not going to play, so it becomes sort of a fine line then in creating a character that's for this, and maybe for a novel a little bit different, right? Because you have a lot more creative leeway. But in a game of like, man, like I have to deal with this like all day at work. Like I don't want to now deal with this when we play games, right? We're supposed to have fun and like, but you have to acknowledge it, right? I mean, like, that's the thing. You can't just like sweep it under the rug. Although you don't want to make maybe make it a focal point. Maybe it's a story beat too, right? Like to bring that sort of stuff up of like we're going to engage with this in like in this sort of safe way, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, of course.
Well, and so part of the thing, like in Evermore with Everlore, we just sort of happened upon the name Wahuru, and my oldest son came up with the name, and it's called the Liberators, because Madatopa is my character, and he wants to liberate people from slavery and all this stuff. Well, we had some of the characters on our team who were just absolutely fine with slavery. You know what I'm saying? And so, and then at the time, Anthony, who was playing my son, was sort of ambivalent, and so we, even in that setting, there was just, so how do you deal with that? And like there was internal struggle between the characters on, what is Madatopa going to, allow, and what is Vondra going to deal with, and things like that. So that was interesting.
The parts with Vondra between Wahuru has a lot of internal struggle. There's been some times earlier on in our stream where it seemed like there were two figureheads of Wahuru. There was the side of Madatopa, and then there was the side of Vondra, and they would crash a lot in like these Civil War scenes where it was like, just in the middle of a clearing, there was a lot of infighting. And I think it's made Wahuru a lot stronger now that we've been able to like butt heads about our issues and, come together and be able to talk together and say, hey, I disagree with this. Well, I disagree with this. Well, we'll clash it out a little bit and then, come to a conclusion together.
And the interesting thing about that is, as the lore master, understanding that there's not classes, there's not levels, things like that. So I don't have to say, okay, you're not playing your character as lawful good or whatever.
Right.
But what I can say is that you can play your character any way you want. However, you're going to have to face the consequences. If you're trucking with demons, that might be okay here, but in other situations, it's not going to be. Right.
Right.
And so, when Vondra again, he had a demon horse who was going around, killing people, and he was okay with that. But then he wasn't sort of, he was a little confused on why other people weren't okay with that, and so, and that's what it is. It's just sort of like the real world aspect of how would these things really impact you. And so, but the beauty of it is that you can adjust your character on the fly, and so that has been really good.
Yeah. But players say, what the consequences of my actions? What?
Yeah, right. I shouldn't have done that. Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
we've had a lot of toughness with that. Sometimes people just don't understand. Like even me, when I used to come like to the sessions, I would be so confused because like I was an Elon and I'm like, huh? Well, this dude got an enchantment and he got like, he got fire sword. Why don't I get fire fists? And he was like, no flame. You're just gonna get the bonus and you can leave. We don't appreciate your kind here. And those were the kind of nuances that I didn't get immediately at first. Part of it might have been that I was on, water polo and the seawater, ocean salt messed me up. But part of it was also just that I didn't understand quite yet that was like, a part of the story that was something that's supposed to be impactful. It's supposed to teach you a lesson through itself.
Yeah. Well, and making players accountable for the, because the thing is, all you have, murder hobos. They just walk into town and, kill everybody. And, Gygax had written down every villager's amount of gold and silver and stuff that they had because, players are going to kill everybody. But you go in and you punch the town guard, you wind up in the jail overnight or whatever, right? Like
exactly.
And it makes the world more real. It makes their consequence, their actions matter in the world, right? Which is really, when you start playing a character, right? Like it's what it is while you're doing it. Like that's it for that amount of time. It's all real, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And all that stuff should matter. I like a modern setting because the choices become that much harder, right? Like, I just, I pull out my sword and I, do whatever. It's like, oh no, you're in the store and this thing happens and there's a monster or whatever. Like, well, shit, I don't know. Like, I'm not pull out a gun and, wah or whatever, like what the hell?
Yeah.
So where did you draw, I mean, obviously D&D probably, but where did you draw your inspirations from for Everlore?
Honestly, most of that was my dreams.
Nice.
I like I said, I've probably played a total of 2 years of the various games in my life. When I became serious about doing this game, I stopped playing other games because I didn't want to be overly influenced with anything. And at the time, truth be told, I was in school. I was married, and there was just a whole bunch going on in my life. I didn't have time to play games. And then after that, I started working corporate, so 60 hours a week or whatever. And so it was just a lot of research. I looked up past cultures, and so I based a lot on Polynesian cultures. There's a lot of influences from Native American cultures, African cultures like Kush, from the Zulu cultures and things like that, because I wanted, often I hear people, sort of say, our world is, sort of separated by race only because that's how it used to be in the past, but my thought is that I hear you, except we're creating the world, so we can take whatever elements we want. And so what I've done is I've taken different elements, from various cultures and just put them together. And so I did a lot of research on all of the different cultures to make sure that we have them. So it's just been a lot of that. I love social studies, and so all of that's come in there. And then honestly, talking to these guys, as we discuss stuff, they say things, and sometimes I'm like, no, and then later I think, oh, well, maybe that's a good idea. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a lot of collaboration.
You know, a lot of it is he says no, and then he eases up a little bit later. Yeah. He you know, Dave and I used to have conversation about how I like, you know, elements of creatures to have helmets. You know, I think armor in fantasy is sick, and I think an important part of that are helmets. And at first I was explaining Dave an aspect of it where it's like having a helmet allows you to like hide the true identity of a person and give them another. And you know, at first he was, you know, kind of iffy on it, and then eventually we got the idea to make a dimension of helmet creatures.
Yes, we have a helm plane. So it's a plane that all the creatures have basically a helm.
Yeah.
And so, but just different things like that. And
Yeah.
so, I read a lot. I've read tons, much more than I've played. And so, I was working on this for probably about 17 or so years.
Wow.
Then we did the testing for probably about 3 or so years. With the testing, I pulled in a couple other guys. And so the people that tested all together, we probably had over 120 or so combined years of experience in playing.
Yeah.
And then, so we had people that had been playing it for 30, 40 years. And then we had people who had been playing it for 6 months, you know, and so that was good because we were able to just sort of beat it up, you know, change some things. But it was always, my idea was there were things I didn't like about some of the games I played and things I did like, but I thought could be done differently. And so that's what we worked on.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that we changed sort of the system of magic so that, you know, whenever mage showed up, the game was over. You know, we wanted to make sure you still had a chance. So we gave every creature what's called core. And so what happens is that when a mage casts a spell, they use their spell dominance against your magic resistance. So you have an innate ability that gives you the chance to beat it.
Yeah.
You know, and so that sort of offsets it a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that go ahead. I was gonna say I think that system of magic works very well because it gives you a kind of scale where it's like when a mage comes into the fight, it's not necessarily game over, but if that mage puts a lot of power into the fact that, you know, they have high spell dominance or, you know, they're able to cast spells that are very strong, a mage can be terrifying because they're a good mage. But on that same token, you can also have somebody who puts a lot of strength into being strong against mages, so you're able to create a character who, you know, nullifies the threat of a mage. And when you have two things that come together like that, it creates this balance that's like, you know, depending on how you build your character, you can leverage whether these situations are, you know, deadly or not based on where you lay your strengths.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. And having just to touch back on the age range of your collective playtesters and all, that's great, right? Because, you know, you get a player who's been playing for 6 months, you know, be like, oh, well, why can't we do this? Where the player's been playing for 30 or 40, it's like, no, it's like this. It's always like this. This is the way this works. You're like, wait. Let's take a look. Let's process all this and see, right? Because like a kid, you know, there's no boundaries when you're new to the system. Like, well, what do you mean I can't? You know,
exactly
do X
right.
or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. And that was this one. You know, oh my goodness. They, you know, him and my sons, you know, because everything, they wanted to be like uber powerful, you know, and so everything had to be like the most powerful thing. Well, if it's all the most powerful, then there's nothing, you know, and it's just like, okay, rein this in, you know. But that was part of what was the fun, you know, because we had to make it fun for them, but also fun for us. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it, is just figuring out sort of how do we get there, you know. And while I was working on this, I mean, you know, there's always people who don't understand your dream, you know. And there were people who said, oh, Dave, you can't do this, you know, you can't create a game that's, you know, levelless and whatever, it's too complicated, it's too whatever, you know. And I said, okay, but it's just something that I had to do, you know. So I just kept doing it. And so I would just get further and further and further. Now, you know, 20 years ago, when I started this, if I had known, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I didn't know it was going to be this, you know. But now, you know, I was just showing Anthony, you know, we're getting ready for the convention, and you know, we have like 40 sets of our books. You know, and that's just it's just amazing to me that we have books, you know, we have posters, we have magnets and t-shirts, you know, and that all came from a dream that I could have just said no, you know, but I said yes, and then other people came along and bought into that vision and made it better, you know, and that's what I love.
That's awesome. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but at any point in 20 years, did you ever think that this was going to be your fantasy heartbreaker? Like this was the thing, like, man, like, it's been like all this time and, you know, just a little bit, you know, you're just, you know, continually just moving the ball a little bit further, you know, towards the goalpost.
Well, and honestly, I've told my boys this, and I'm sure Anthony's heard this because he's heard an awful lot, is that, you know, I work on this and I work on this all the time, and it may not work. You know, I mean, this may not go anywhere, but I know if I don't try, it won't. You know, and I would hate to be 67 years old and look back and say, oh man, if only I had done this. You know, because I have a vivid imagination, and I remember growing up, like I said, I would write down my stories and ideas and stuff like this, and I would go to different movies and I would see things that I had thought of in a movie, and I say, that's my idea, you know. And of course, I mean, they didn't steal my idea, but you know, and so I know we have good ideas, you know, and so I wanted my boys to see me toiling at something, because I want to teach them, if nothing else, a work ethic. You know, I want Anthony to see, you know, this is what it takes to be successful and to strive for your dream, you know, because I'm just Dave, you know, but guess what? Now I'm Dave and Anthony, you know, I'm Dave, Anthony, Caleb, and David, you know, and so as more people learn about us, we'll grow.
Eventually it all adds up to Pretty Boy Dave T, right?
That's right. Hey, you know, Pretty Boy Dave T. That's right.
That's what he calls himself.
You get t-shirts with that.
That's right. Well, you know, I mean, if nobody else is going to call me pretty, I'm going to call myself pretty. You know what I'm saying? At least my wife does, so that's good.
Yep, there you go. All right. So, you know, we were sort of dancing around this, you know, talking about stuff, but tell us about the world. What is Everlore? What's the setting like? What's happening?
Okay. You want to take a stab at it, or you want?
Oh, all right, sure. I'll go for it. The world of Everlore is very earthy, if that makes any sense. It's well, it is, you know. Whenever you're traveling, you know, very rarely do you have something like ships or, you know, floating aircrafts. It's usually just you're going across on foot, you know. You'll stop by a river for a water source, you'll set up a campfire, that kind of thing. The, you know, forests are vast and huge, and towns and cities and things are typically very small. The very large ones are sparse and in between, but they're filled with character. You know, you have a bunch of different people, from magic users who are, you know, conning people out of money to try and make a quick buck, to, you know, honest soldiers who are, you know, fighting for a cause they believe in, all down to, you know, the ancient ruins deep within mountainsides where the mummies end up, you know, unhanding one of the members of the triad.
That did happen, yes.
Yeah. The world is very, you know, intertwined within itself. You know, there's one NPC you can meet in like a city all the way in Starsong, which is like in the middle of the continent somewhat, and then you can head to the other side of Chalyuk-sen, which is like on the other half of the continent, and meet people who, you know about each other and understand each other. And the world is just so, I know we've said this before, but it's diverse, and it's, you know, great world building too. The way that everything kind of connects to one another, and how when you see a shift in like one part of the world, it affects everything else in some kind of way that's meaningful. And so the world it's very adaptable, but it's also very real in the way that it's, you know, designed to be a place where people live and persist and exist.
And also, so good, but it's also, the idea is that the realm is called Everlore, And within Everlore, the primary world that you deal with is Mythandria. And Mythandria has 8 different continents. And the continent where most of the action takes place that we center on in the first set is called Midian. And
Midian was what I was describing.
yes. And so within the Travis Compendium, which is the book that players will get and explains how to play, we describe 10 of the primary kingdoms of Midian. So it is, sort of roughly Middle Ages. And the whole realm itself is suffused with a plane of magic, which is called the Shadow Sea. And so the Shadow Sea is what gives everything access to magic. So when mages or anyone is attempting to cast a spell, they're actually opening themselves up to the Shadow Sea. And in essence, what they're doing, they don't need spell components or even to really utter words. In essence, what they're doing is they're manipulating the flow of magic to achieve a certain thing. And so spirits are very big in this world, but then also so are what's called shadowborn entities. And shadowborn entities are people that live in the Shadow Sea. And so mortals often will find a patron that's a shadowborn patron who will be able to give them better understanding of magic, or they might find spirits that will give them a better understanding of magic. And so as Anthony was saying, there's a whole host of things you can do in the world. But basically, everybody in the world is concerned that at any moment, the Legion can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the Legion is an army that can spring up at any time. And they center in a continent called Morratear. And Morratear is the biggest continent of the world. And every once in a while, Shamir, the god of chaos, says, hey, form the Legion and go and destroy whatever. It could be a continent. It could be a temple. It could be somebody's home. He doesn't care. So what'll happen is every being on that continent that is able will stop whatever they were doing and will form into the Legion, build ships, cross the ocean. Crossing the ocean in Everlore is something that is very hairy because of the world beast Minhosh. And that is something that basically will destroy ships en masse.
I didn't even know it had a name.
Yes, it does. And so anyway, very few, about half of those ships will be lost, but still a massive army of 20, 30 million is going to arrive and try to devastate whatever. So that has caused throughout the years kingdoms to fall, kingdoms to rise, and so individuals to scatter. And so that's one of the reasons that cultures have been displaced all over. And that's one of the reasons that we can explain why diversity has traveled so far around the world.
Nice. I don't know if you want to answer this question or not, but is that a potential source of, novel material to, go through this, large, summoning and then having the army kind of come out? It seems to be rife for that sort of.
That is definitely, those are things that obviously we will build into. Mm-hmm. The Legion is something that's sort of at the back of your mind, and so we'll always play with the idea of will it not. Right. And there are some beings that want the Legion to happen. They're fanatics, and so they try to encourage Shamira, hey, look this way, yeah. So they try to do some things, and of course they get shanked real quick. But yes, definitely stories will abound with those kind of things.
The idea of the Legion is fascinating, and I feel like it's too good of an idea just to leave and not do anything with. So it's definitely the source of maybe some novel material, maybe something for a video game, movie, if we ever get to that.
We will get to that, yes. But beyond that, there's when the current pantheon that resides over Everlore arrived there, they came from outside of Everlore. And so they actually came, and there was actually a war of the gods that were before them. And so the new gods actually battled with the old gods, in that they solicited some help. And so they created godlings. And so they eventually defeated the old gods. Well, in the process, they basically splintered all of the planes that existed in that realm. And so they were able to create new planes and things like that, but that left tons of splinters. And so they're called Splinter Planes. And so every once in a while, a splinter plane, which is just a portion of a plane before, will attach itself to Mythandria. And so when that happens, creatures and other things can come out of there. And so that, gives the opportunity for a lot of things to happen. And so Wahuru has encountered some things, dealing with that. But it's just, there's just tons of opportunities, to be had here.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I like the lore stuff, all the world building stuff. That sounds really neat.
Yeah.
And so populated with standard fantasy races, with obviously with your spin on them. Then
yeah, we have tons of races. You want to talk about some of the races?
Oh yeah, no. I think one of my favorite races in Everlore are probably actually the Elon. They're this race. I believe they're created by Lore, right?
The Elon?
Yeah, the Elon. Yeah.
Yes. So who is Lore?
Oh, so Lore, he's the god of trickery, right?
Yes, the trickster.
Yeah, the trickster. And he's actually responsible for one of the in-game mechanics called the Singularity. It's a Lore's Folly, where it's basically like, if you roll a 1 on a d12 when you're in combat, you automatically miss. That's the Singularity. The Lore's Folly is when you have to roll a d12 after a single 1, and if you get another 1, you miss stupendously, really badly. Like you might just summon a copy of yourself. You missed bad.
Yeah.
And then you have to fight that copy of yourself. But Lore, he created this race of adaptable, just giant, like some are easily like 9 foot tall, right?
Yeah.
And it's just this race of, dark skinned adaptable people who live in, any kind of environment. There's Elon tunnelers who are able to become smaller or larger, get through cave systems and the like. There's Elon what is the one that's able to do the one with the spells, right? No, come on. Or Farron Elons, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They're the ones who have the spell ability to be like werewolves, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The Farron Elons.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's plenty of other, sub races of our, base races, but Elons are probably one of my favorite. They were my first character, Caliph.
Yeah. We do have a lot of the standard, dwarves, elves, things like that. We have as far as the dwarves, some different things about them is we have the Marin dwarves, which are aquatic dwarves. We have Soren dwarves, which are winged dwarves. We have Vulcan dwarves, which are basically made out of the magma of Mythandria. Elves, we have many different varieties of elves. One is the star elves. They don't actually live on Mythandria. They live on the frozen moon, and they can travel through Mythandria through the rays of the moonlight. There are some of the newer races. We have dragon spawn. We have 2 different kinds. One is a Rorgan, and that is birth of a non-dragon mother, and then a Draken is birth of a dragon mother. We have Shakarns, which sort of like cat people.
Nice.
We have Drex, which are they are sort of very organic sort of chemists, and so they are very technical. What they can do is they can touch something and sort of understand its chemical makeup. We have
very sciencey at birth.
Yeah, we have the Nator, which is it's made of 2 different races. They think that they're superior to everything. One is the Nator, and they can Natari, and they can create like bone shards on their skin. So different things like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do the Reddit, so where WotC and other companies get in trouble, it's like, this race is this, right? They're all mean and they're all whatever, and they do, whatever the thing is. How is Everlore set up that subverts that and says, like, these can be anything? Is there like a stat block write up? Like, how's the history for races presented?
Well, what we do is like we do give a sort of general, hey, this is typically what they look like,
Right.
but in that we don't say this race is evil, this race is good. We give a sense for sort of the overall makeup of them. Like the Orsine are they are the half orcs, and so their backstory is that they are looked at negatively because of something that one of them did long ago, and so all of them they're either going to accept that or sort of going to fight against it, but they're all sort of holding that shame.
Yeah.
True.
The Shorn are a remnant of the first war of the Legion, and so during that first war, there were beings from the Shadow Sea that were helping sort of the bad guys, and they angered one of the gods. And he said, you know what? I'm going to forever, separate you from the Shadow Sea. So you were shorn. And so some of them want to make him regret his decision, because Bushima was the Allfather who did that. Some of them want to act so good that he acquiesced and let them back in, and so they all have the same, Bible that they look at, but they view it in a different way. And so we try to, even within the same race, put in diversity, and give you the agency for how you want to play that.
Of course, yeah. And I think one of the other thing about races that I think is great is that you can play whichever race you want, but typically a character is related to a culture that defines them more so than the race. So like you can be a Burvor, which in Everlore is a race of more mammalian, kind of
like badger people,
like badger people, something similar to that. And Burvors can be looked at in any kind of light, but your specific character is related to a kind of culture. And some of them may be more aggressive than others, some of them may be more diplomatic, but I think the greatest way that Everlore impacts the fact that you are what your character is, as opposed to how they're defined by their race, is the culture, because you can gain abilities and actual like different things from your culture, and that says you are defined more so by like what your character is, what race, or like not what race of people they come from, what group of people they come from, as opposed to just what race. Like where you grow up, where you learn things from defines you a lot more than simply what skin color or what attributes you have at birth. And that's one of my favorite systems, is that you can come from a specific culture as opposed to just saying that one culture is one race.
Right. I like that. That's very cool. Like people would look at the US and be like, we're all crazy, gun toting, fast food eating.
People see those kinds of things, but they don't say, hey, Louisiana is way different from New Jersey, or California is a totally different place from Washington. They just kind of see the US and think, oh, everybody there does this, when really it's broken down into a lot more specific subcultures. And I think Everlore captures that kind of diversity very well.
Well, and with our cultures, we have a culture called Tres Lantes, which is like a pirate culture. Chalyuk-Sin is based on like Native Americans. We have Zulu and Kush, based on Africans. Vizithia based on the Egyptians. We have Kalitan, which is based on like the Scandinavian. We have Gaiajanan, which is based on the traditional Elvens. So I mean, we sort of encapsulate it all. And we have Gafremin, which is sort of like the evil Elven nation. And so the idea is that you as the character can look at these and decide on what you want to be. And then, as you're building your character, we have things called quirks, which are things that you can select, but you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And those are just ways to sort of further, enhance your character.
Yeah.
And so like you might have one that gives you an enhance to speed, or you might have one that gives you, like, I think one of our players has one that's called light sleeper. So, they won't get caught off guard, where the rest of them sleep through, an elephant walking through,
Yeah.
they'll jump up if a mouse comes through,
Yeah,
so different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Nicarvon specifically, she has a quirk, what is it? The one that gives you +1 to spell dominance and magic resistance every 100 EP.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, basically it makes her more adept to spells, which is, one of her positive quirks, and that grows with her every 100 EP. But she also has heavy sleeper, which means if an elephant were to step on her, she wouldn't wake up. And that's the kind of thing where it's like you can differentiate your character based on your character as opposed to lumping it in with everything else that is its race.
Yeah. So you said EP. Sorry, let me jump in there and explain. We say EP for experience points. And the way you progress your character in Everlore is you gain EP as you're playing, at the end of each session. Typically I'll ask them some questions, they'll get EP for that. And just for general gameplay. EP is not tied to like combat or anything like that. And then when you have your EP, you can spend it at any time for like proficiencies. You can spend it for traits, and traits are sort of things that your character is born with. Proficiencies are things that your character learns, and aptitudes are sort of things that you're sort of generally good at. And then at every 100 EP, there's a roll that you do, and that sort of ups your base stats. So those are the ways that you progress your character in Everlore.
That's how you define the difference between somebody who's 800 and 1000 EP.
Yeah.
Right. Now, with the quirks, is there anything specifically tied to role playing, or are they all sort of more mechanical based?
There's actually some that tie a lot into role playing. Some of it is, I believe there's one where if you take it, you are being hunted down by a faction or like a certain enemy.
Nice.
And you may know what it is or may not know what it is, but this will essentially bring extra encounters into you. And, some of them may just be, you have a toxic personality. And part of it is that you do take on stat reductions, but you also kind of play that in your character. Like if Dave were to come up and say, "Hey, what's up?" I'd be like, "No, get away from me, bucko. You're ugly."
We also have one like called Psychopath. You just like yes, he does. You just like killing. So you have to rein your character in. You have to roll mental fortitude to try to if somebody just accidentally hits you, you want to get at them. There's one called Horse Dread. You're afraid of horses. You're going to see a horse and you're just going to run away. There's one that bad odor. You smell. So there's a bunch of different things that are not just combat oriented.
Sure.
That really go towards that gameplay.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that. I like systems that give you the option, because it gives you not only for the player to get a hook into the character, but also for the GM, if you have a whole faction coming after you, right? It gives you a lot of threads to pull on to keep everybody engaged, keep, things happening, to keep the world alive, because, these things are happening over here while you're over here, and maybe they connect or maybe they don't. And maybe you're not expecting it and they do. And good luck then,
Well, and the beautiful thing as the lore master is like, I know what all of the quirks are. So like, I know my character Morratear, I am being hunted by a very powerful entity, and so that has impacted us probably about a year ago, where we were being chased by like zombies and stuff. We managed to get out of that. But did we really kill that foe, or is it still coming back? I know. They don't know that, and so that's the thing. And so like Morratear doesn't know, he's blissfully unaware that he might die tomorrow, and so that's what, is the beauty of those things. And that's just something that, it's not something that you have to add onto your character, but it's something that will help, further delineate your character from others.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, you said when earlier, Anthony was saying when you roll a D12 in combat, so it's a D12 based system.
Oh yeah, no, all the
Yeah.
way. When you're in combat, you typically default to a D12. That's when you're using to hit, which is to see if your attack lands on somebody.
Yep.
The damage dice can be different. You can use a D4, D6, depending on just how much damage your weapon does. But when you're trying to hit somebody, our default system is D12.
Okay, nice. Is there a skill system involved as well?
Oh, you would be better fit to explain this.
We have the so we have what's called aptitudes, and aptitudes are sort of what you're good at. We have 12 different aptitudes. Those are things like insight, survival, prowess, and things like that. And so those are sort of like the typical ones. And then you build on that. You're gonna say
the aptitudes are just things you would typically roll for. Like
Yep.
you might roll insight to navigate through woods, or insight to see, or survival to navigate through woods, insight
Yes.
to like look around.
Yep,
that
yep.
kind of thing.
And then you purchase proficiencies, to build if you want to become, Reaper is he's an excellent thief. And so, Matatopa can't pick a lock, Reaper can, and so you purchase those proficiencies, and that's how you develop your enhanced skills in those.
Yeah.
And the way we've done it is that there's not like a direct skill tree, so it's not like you have to get one to get the other to get the other. There are some that sort of link, but most have dual ways to get to them.
Yeah. And
Nice.
like you were asking how it applies to combat, people who are more combat oriented can, apply themselves a few different ways. Like archers are going to work much differently than physical combaters. Some examples of physical skills might be Dance of Death, which lets you hit two enemies that are near you as like a free attack, as opposed to spending, APR in order to fight with. Another one that we've been concepting without, releasing entirely just yet is Battle Bully, which is an ability where you're able to hit somebody, and then if the attack lands, you can throw them any direction 10 feet during combat.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah, no, it's pretty sick. It lets you like make your character unique in what they do during combat, so you feel like you have a unique role and you stand out during combat.
Right. And classless, I mean, you could essentially, people are going to gravitate, right? So, if, Reaper can pick a lock, so he's a good thief, right? So there's no thief class, but, you can sort of steer in a direction, but you're not limited to like, I'm just a thief and I can only do thief things. So
Exactly.
classless is nice in that.
There's going to be character archetypes, but you're not locked into that.
Well, and the thing is, like, with the ability to purchase, anything, proficiencies, traits, and aptitudes at any time, you can say, oh, my character is deficient in this, I want to purchase, and so you can enhance your character. Now, the way we do it is that just because you purchase something doesn't mean that your character can do it in game. So in game, you should have some reason to have learned it. So like Matatopa, I've purchased the ability to craft some things, but I haven't apprenticed,
Right.
And so once I start doing that, so and that's my friend here, he wanted to do all kind of big things, so he spent a lot of VP to get some stuff.
My first character, Caliph, he wanted an animal spirit patron, which that proficiency not only allows you to have access to higher tier spells, it also lets you turn into an animal of the spirit patron you are working with. Caliph was so excited to become a tiger, and yet he never got the chance to do that, and he's still a little bit upset about that in the afterlife.
He never went and talked to a spirit patron to say, "Hey, will you be my patron?"
I talked to a couple spirit patrons,
and then he went and got himself killed. So yes,
there's a little bit of salt in the afterlife.
Nice. Oh, so speaking of character death, how common is it, or how easy is it to lose a character, right? Because across various systems, that's either super easy, or D&D, your health is just on a yo-yo and you're always fine. Really,
death occurs at -13 essentially.
You can get to
and
negative 12 vitality before you actually kick the bucket.
Yeah.
At 0, that's when you get knocked out. So your
Yeah.
character doesn't have the ability to like move or anything. At negative 13, that's when your X marks the spot.
death is possible. And so here's the thing. When we started, the a lot of the guys that were on the stream, most of the guys hadn't really played. And so the first year was just sort of trying to get them up to snuff, and stop having them do such impulsive things. So we played a little bit first, and like right off the bat, one of them died. But I think since we've been playing, we've had 3 total deaths. So it's possible. You hope that your characters learn, when to cast that spell timely to save somebody else. But yeah, if the situation goes, because your characters are beefy. I mean, you can get to the point where you're dropping 50 points in one hit. 50 points of vitality damage in one hit, and you can probably do that 3 or 4 times, and so you can kill somebody pretty quickly. So you have to be strategic about how you do it. You can't just walk up and whack everybody, because that person might be able to knock you out.
Yeah.
And so, matter of fact, just like last week, we were involved in a skirmish that I thought we were going to die, because the lore master, when I wrote it, I didn't anticipate us facing the enemy, but these guys faced the enemy. And it was just some lucky circumstances.
It was kind of hilarious. Carvin, my character, she was ready to fight this ogre who was probably a couple weight classes up over her.
Yes.
She was just ready to take it. So
and she was going to die.
But yeah, she's definitely going to die. But the ogre, it swings at her and it gets a Lore's Folly, and its weapon gets stuck into the ground.
Yes.
And Nicarvon just hit that out of pure, cockiness.
So, so that's one of the things, is that the dice themselves can change the shape of the game.
Yeah.
Like he was saying, we have what's called singularities. There's if you roll a 1 and then you roll a double 1, that's called a Lore's Folly, and something very bad happens. But also you can roll a 12 and a double 12, and that's called a Vander's Delight, and then something great happens. And so in combat, you're praying for that Vanador's Delight if you're rolling. And that saved us more than once. One time it brought a big angel, like 150 foot angel, on the field of battle, and killed like 200 enemy. And so now one of our characters is called Angel Friend, because so many people saw that happen.
Yep.
But yeah, just things like that.
Yeah,
that's cool. This is only funny for me, but you guys keep saying singularity. And we have in one of our games, we have a guy, he's playing a character, his name is Reggie, and we have this thing called the Singularity. And every time you say it, I laugh a little bit to myself, because you almost never hear that word. And every time that we talk about it, it's always that. It's just, it's a me thing.
Yeah, no, I got you. That's pretty funny though. Yeah. Singularity. Is that like his name, or is that an ability he has?
His name is Reggie, but like so it's a game called Day Tripper. So it's sort of a reality hopping, there's a multiverse, and there's dream worlds and all these different things. And our character called Day Tripper. So we, sort of blink out of existence here, wind up at another planet, and do whatever the mission is. But he has come to understand that there are Reggies on all of these other multiverses. So they just turn into like a whole thing.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
That's nice.
That game, unfortunately, is on hold because life is complicated. And hopefully we get back to it, but that's neither here or there.
Oh yeah.
Maybe might happen. Maybe might not.
Yeah, we'll see. So on the scale of crunch, where does EverLore lie from like rogue trader to like fiasco?
When you say crunch, what do you mean by that?
So heavy mechanically. So like a lighter system would be the system that powers Day Trippers is called Core. It's a single D6, it's a D6 system. It's dice pools. The mechanics are fairly light and nimble, where something like, say Rogue Trader or even 4th edition D&D, heavy crunch, like just tons and tons of information and roles and rules and all that kind of stuff.
I'd say it's probably on the 60% heavy rules. It does have a lot of proficiencies, and so proficiencies are basically how you build your character out. And so it becomes simpler once you understand the proficiencies, but you do have to understand what you're doing. And we broke combat down into 2 rounds to make it easier. Your character has APR, so your actions per round. You get to use half of those at the top and then half of those at the bottom. So the idea is easy, but then as your character gets more APR, your character can do more things with those APR.
Right.
And so sometimes I tell the guys, think about what you're going to do before you get to the action, instead of you're watching everything else and then it's like, oh, now I have to think about what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so that's where sort of that crunch comes in. But once you understand it, like some of these guys, they can rattle off like, oh, we're going to do this spell and it's on page X, and it does this, and as guys do,
Right.
and so you pick it up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I downloaded the free stuff, the preliminary, like here's what we're doing kind of stuff, and I looked at the character sheet and I was like, okay, there's a lot of derived things on here.
Yeah, the character sheet itself is intimidating, but you begin to realize fairly quickly, as soon as you fill out the left side, the rest is just calculations based on the left side. It helps you understand like what your character can do and when to do it and how to do it and that kind of thing. It looks intimidating, but as soon as you get into it, it feels great to use the character sheet. The lore master might ask you to do a craft roll to see if you can put together, 2 sticks to make a bonfire, and then you quickly figure out the sheet, and it's intimidating to set up. And sometimes Dave and I have to go back to like make a character sheet for, a one shot. And it's, it's a bit of work to make a character just from scratch because you have to do the rolls and stuff. But getting into the ebb and flow of it definitely makes it a lot easier.
Well, essentially what I did when I was, thinking about creating the character is I was thinking about how are we in our real lives? I believe that we're born with certain abilities. So those are the traits. As we grow up,
just in the top left corner.
As we grow up, we're naturally good at certain things just from everyday life. And so those are the aptitudes. And then we go to school to learn. And so those are proficiencies. And so on the character sheet, traits are the first thing you sort of lay in, and then they inform everything else. So traits, once you put in a number for traits, and then that's why like on our website, we have the fillable character sheet. So once you put in the one number, it's going to populate,
nice.
And so it starts to autofill a lot of those other blanks. So you don't seem like you're putting in so much because you're just putting in the same number, you know? And so the rest of it is you're adding on any personal investment that you've done or any enhancements from like magic or something like that. But it basically all stems from the traits.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. And you do all the art, right, Dave? Or the majority of it, at least?
I do, yeah.
I actually drew the shield once and posted it in the group chat. He does like 99% of the art. And I'm the upper one. It's all of the quality coming from me.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I had always envisioned, hiring artists, hiring writers, hiring, this, that, and the other, but I didn't have the money, and so I knew that if it was going to be, done, I had to do it. And so, so I just started drawing, and, like I said, they were he was 9 or 10 when, so I've been drawing for 8, 9, 10 years on this stuff.
You've gotten pretty good at it too.
Yeah. And it was just out of necessity. And so, yes, I do all the artwork. I've done all of the design work. And as I can find artists, I can work with people, and I have a couple of people who submit art and things like that. And hopefully we'll be able to bring in as we continue to be successful, because I envision a day when we have a team of people to do this.
Right. That's always the dream, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Had you, as things were getting close to being finished and you were playtesting and stuff like that, had you considered doing Indiegogo or Kickstarter or anything like that to?
Yeah, I have a couple things. I'm a father. I work full time, and then I work on this full time, and so doing those things is also another full time job, because then you have to promote them, and so it was just a problem trying to figure all that out.
Yeah.
Plus I'd have to learn the technology for all of those, and so that was just tough.
And then on top of those kind of things, you also have to give the people who are backing you, some kind of guarantee that they're going to get a return on their investment, which with Everlore, Dave and I are really confident that, this is something that we can make into a real, household name, something that people will recognize, but not
at the
certain.
time we weren't, because we didn't have the books and stuff like that.
Yeah, because, we're not certain when we'll be able to, make it work, and so we're very confident that we have a great product. We have something amazing that people will love. It's just we're not certain what goals we'll be able to hit and when people will see the fruit of our labor.
Right. And just some people watching, I don't know, my camera just freaked out. I don't know what's going on with my laptop. I'm here.
Yeah, I saw that happen. I was kind of just going to skirt over it, but if you want to address it.
That's technology. It is what it is.
So then you get to see Dave and I.
That's right. Pretty boy Dave T. Look at that. That's right.
You didn't get kicked off the stream yourself, right? I think it might just be us here.
I think it might be.
So, Dave, how do you feel about your smashing success, Everlore?
Well, I think we're still working on it.
Right.
Okay. Why are you working on Everlore?
Why am I working on Everlore?
Yeah, I mean this was my dream. Why are you doing it?
I'm here because you invited me to participate in your dream. I think one of the greatest things in the industry of entertainment is when people have a really great idea and they center in on it, they hone on it, and then they hit it, and they hit it hard. They don't try to hit the bottom common denominator and appease to as many people as possible. They see their own dream and they pursue it, and they come up with an idea that they show to everybody, and instead of trying to appeal to as many people as possible, they have such a great idea that everybody comes and flocks to it. And I feel like Everlore can be one of those things where it's not pandering to any specific audience. It's just so good that it pulls people in. And I feel like you have a very good idea and you've been very ambitious for it. And the fact that I have the honor of being able to be on part of such a dedicated crew with such a good idea, it's a wonderful, experience to have. And I wouldn't miss it for the world.
I'm looking forward to introducing it at Origins. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrified. Success.
Welcome back.
I had to close the browser, wouldn't let me in.
Oh,
but no, I was just saying, we're going to be at Origins this June, and I'm excited, but I'm terrified. Because obviously I've never done this before. And that's 20,000 people. And yes, I believe the product is good and all that, but at my core, I'm an introvert. And the idea of thousands and thousands of people walking by and me going hello, it's got me freaked out a bit.
It's not going to be just him; it'll be everybody in the team saying hello.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we've been they've been good. The organizer have been good about sort of answering some of my questions, because we've been trying to make sure we get the products right, and we're trying to, we're going to put stuff in the coupon book and stuff like that. And so we're just trying to make sure that it's the best experience. If you guys have any suggestions, on what you would like to see, please let us know. You can either, email us at ManChild ManChildLtd@gmail.com.
I know you're about to say the website name, right?
Yeah, I know. or on Facebook at EverLore Game. We'd love to hear your feedback. We're just trying to make sure that this is a good, positive experience for everybody. So that's the pitch there.
Nice. Now, are you running games or are you just doing a booth?
Okay. So here's the thing. I believe we're running games, but that's one of the questions that I have for them. What I would like to do is I'd like to run games. We have a couple one-shots that we like to run, but then also I want to have a couple sessions where we're just creating characters, so people get experience of that. But then also we do this thing called Creature Creation Station, where, we take one of my drawings and we sit down and we say, okay, what is this? And so what I'd like to do is, invite people to participate in that. So those are the sort of the three things that we'd like to do at our demo booth. Nice. And so but I have to work it out with them and, figure out when we can do what. But yeah, so the idea would be run games, do the character sheets, just so everybody can see how that is and how they can build any type of character they want.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so they can get their hands on and just feel like they're a part of building out the new Monsters Menagerie, because those creatures that they are going to help us work on will go into the next volume of the Monsters Menagerie.
Nice. That's cool. That's really cool. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you guys want to talk about, or anything you feel like we've missed or maybe glossed over?
No, I think we've covered it all. I do want to thank you for giving us the opportunity, and the big thing I want to stress is that with Everlore, it is about diversity and customization. But the idea on that is it is addition and not subtraction. When I had a conversation before, and it was on Facebook, and someone was saying, "Oh, well, you're against D&D and all this." I'm not against anything. I'm just for everything. And so that's the difference. And so that's what I want to get, the message I want to get across.
Yeah, no, all the way. I think
right. You could not play D&D and still be a gamer, right? Like it's the elephant in the room. It's always going to be there. It's going to bring a lot of people in, but like it has its faults. Like
no, all the way. There's nothing wrong with some healthy competition. If somebody executes something and you think you can do it better, you're free to do so.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, we played a very short campaign for D&D, and then that fell apart. And I was on another podcast, two other podcasts doing D&D, and it's fine, right? But like we don't play normal, right? Like it doesn't, we just tell our own stories, and it just happens to be D&D because it does combat really well. Yeah. And you could do other things, but like it does combat really well. That's what it does. So whatever.
I think one of the questions I was hoping to get asked was about our personal campaign and how that's coming along so far. Because I think we have a really interesting cast of characters, don't you?
I do, but fill them in if you'd like.
Yeah. So Dave earlier was talking about our group named Wahuru, which is the Liberators, and I think we have a pretty dope group of characters. Would you like to tell them about Morratear first, since you're the main creator of Everlore?
Well, okay. Morratear is an Elon, and he is from the Zulu Nation, and the Zulu Nation was created. Basically, they were escaped slaves from Gathremen, and so the nation was created through the aid of warriors from Chayuk-Sin. And so he has a close tie with Chayuk-Sin. And so so he and his two sons were traveling, and they encountered some of the other members of Wahuru. And Morratear is big on, you know, making sure that nobody's enslaved, and he has a moral compass, thinking, and basically he feels like the world is fallen, and you know, it's his duty to build it up. And so that often, you know, has some butting heads with others of the group.
Yeah.
And so we have Reaper, who is basically, you know, thief. He's in it for, you know, for the gold. And Balak is a young warrior from Chayuk Sin. They are both halflings. We have Stitch, who is a Vlel, who everybody loves him.
Yeah, no, everybody who tunes
yes.
into the Twitch chat, they'll
Yes.
they'll give up as many bits as they can just to, you know, make sure he stays alive during a fight.
Yes, he's played by my older brother, and you know, and it's great to have him on there. But I think his character is not as good as Matopa. And there's Vandra, who is a Rorgan, so he's a half dragon. And there is Nicarvwin.
Yeah, no. So Nicarvwin, she comes. She's based a little bit on the history of Caliph, my first character. As you can tell, he's dead. If you didn't,
he was my son who made a very stupid mistake.
Yeah, silly mistake.
Yes.
Caliph's
his father did not teach him that.
Yeah, Caliph was adopted by Maratopa, and you know, he was just an Elon tunneler, the one I was talking about earlier. He had to help Maratopa through a lot of big spooky caves because they were overhead. Elons have a fear of claustrophobia, and Caliph didn't, because he was an Elon tunneler. You know, tunnelers, they fit into caves and stuff, so they don't worry about that kind of, you know, tight space. But he was a monk kind of character, you know, lots of fists, you know, equal balance of spell and, you know, fighting, that kind of thing. He died when he picked up a weapon that caused him to become mind controlled, and he was shot to death by Restyllian. I still don't think anybody gives Restyllian enough flack for that. That's Davy's character. But after Caliph's body was combined with the soul that Stitch had brought, that
created Nicarvwin.
Yeah, that created Nicarvwin, who is my current character. You know, she's a very front heavy, you know, character, warrior, heavy armor, that kind of deal. She considers herself the granddaughter of Maratopa, but Maratopa still has yet to...
He's still not feeling her just yet.
Yeah, you know, he'll get around to it one way or another. It's
nice
very
to
funny
put
because...
character in that way. To be able to blend your former character, bring that story, and to bring in a new character. That's a nice way to do it.
Oh yeah, no, it was a really great idea on Dave's behalf to you know, create somebody who's like shades of Caliph, the original character, because Caliph's belief was that, like, no matter what, he wants to protect his party, so that way nobody has to undergo the pain. And, you know, he would do that by, like, you know, knocking blows away from enemies. Nicarvwin is, you know, the same kind of deal, but she does it a much different way. You know, instead of being a monk, she's a knight, you know, kind of like a warrior. And so her whole deal is, instead of knocking the blows away from people, she'll just take the blows herself by going in headstrong.
Well, and the thing was that was actually an emotional death, because it was the first death of a character in a long time. And it happened at a time where we were all a little raw, you know, and so we all felt the sort of way about it. Plus, it had been building up. Like, I had been building up the story for a while, and so that was like the big boss. And so so when that happened, it wasn't supposed to play out that way. But it was cool, because in that same episode, Maratopa avenged him when everybody else was gone. You know, everybody else had left, and it was just Maratopa and this guy who would have been able to kill Maratopa, except the roles happened, you know? And but then, so because of the situation, you know, we wanted to make sure that we treated, you know, his character right. And, you know, he did lose a lot of EP, and, you know, but
I lost out on a lot.
Because, you know, but we were able to bring some elements of that back.
Yeah.
And it, you know, there should always be, like, at least the threat of death, right? Like, because if everything always succeeds and, you know, everything's always happy or whatever, like, then there's no, like, then what's the point, right? Like, it's still fun to get together, you know, you're having a good time. But, like, those moments then become so much more poignant if, you're playing for all this time and then something happens. And
Yeah.
maybe it's just a bad roll, or maybe it was a bad decision, or a combination of the two things. But then that has more value and more poignance and more, it should always be there.
And sometimes I even, will do it where it's not maybe a death, but, I might allow somebody to steal something that you thought was very valuable. Just different things like that, that just let real things can happen here.
Yeah, I've had both of those things happen. Death and my +4 speed amulet got taken. Wonder who let that happen. But I think one of the most things that made Wahoo really realize their value was when, I think it was that same episode or the one before, everybody was shown their possible fate. And Caliph's was that he grew to be 42 feet tall, and he ripped off the wings of this zombie dragon in front of his army of, warrior monks by this castle wall. And he put them into different dimensions of snow and ice. And later, that was when he died. And so it kind of showed Wahoo that, your potential is up to here, but the threat is also up there, And so it's you're able to be strong, but you have to persevere through it.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Still really miss out on killing the zombie dragon.
Sounds like a great game. It sounds like you guys are having a good time. Like I said, I don't normally get to watch streams. I'm always doing something, but I definitely want to check it out because it does sound like a very rich world. It sounds like a fun game table. Sounds like you guys are telling great stories. So I definitely want to, try to swing in and check it out. What days do you guys normally record for those who are checking this out later?
Well, we have a stream on Monday, which is Essence of Everlore, which is from 6:50 to 9. And that's with a group where Uriah lore masters for not me and Dave. And then we have a group Thursday, which is...
Hold on. And that one is at twitch.tv/Essence of Everlore. And then ours is Evermore with Everlore. And that airs from on Thursdays from 6:50 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's at twitch.tv/Everlore game.
Yeah, that's why
I'll go back and throw a link in the show notes. There's a link for the website and
okay,
I think
great,
Twitter and all that stuff. But I'll go back at the Twitch link. Somebody, just is impetuous enough to click on it and then they want to save it.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Thank you guys for coming on. This was a ton of fun. I'm glad that you had reached out to me. It had been a while since I've done this, so I was a little, had a little bit of trepidation coming in.
Oh, trust, we feel it.
It's all good. We're on the same wavelength. Don't even worry. Yeah, no, thank you so much for hosting us.
I was like, Anthony, do I look pretty enough?
Well, it says so on a t-shirt, right?
Right.
Yeah, I realized only right at the start that I'm half your size, even when I'm sitting down. So I was kind of
a couple of books.
Everlord game takes up half my body space here on the screen, but it's all good. It was a grand time. Thank you so much for having us.
Nice. No, absolutely. I'm going to cut into a commercial here. We have coffee for sale. If you are a coffee aficionado, you go to tinyurl.com/legendary brew. We have a nice, easy drinking medium roasted. I would say by our own GM, Neil, but Neil hasn't GM'd the game in a while, but he's still our Neil. So you go ahead, order coffee. It's shipping is always free. If you use code Legends10, you'll get 10% off your order. It's really great stuff. I put an order in today because I ran out. I bought something else. It's god awful. I just want to just throw the bag out, but it wasn't cheap, so I'm stuck drinking that till it comes in. But coffee reviews, all the things. Check out Everlore as well. Check over their Twitch stream. I will add a link in the show notes for that as well. It sounds like a great game. Thanks again, you guys, for coming on. It was a lot of fun, and I wish you guys a lot of luck.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
No, peace out, man.
Absolutely. Cool. Thanks. And we out.
All right.
Yeah.